All right, here I am with three of my closest friends from the worlds of business, internet marketing, Australia, America, guys I've known, well, some of you for many, many years, at least a few years for all of them. So I'd love to introduce you to three of my closest buddies. I've got Nick from Nothing, Manny from lots of things, but we're going to go say focusblocks.io for today, and Gideon from Splashio. But you may also know Gideon from many, many years working on some projects with me if you're a long-term follower. I invited these guys onto the podcast. Just we're going to do a test run, see if this is something we enjoy doing, see if there's something there's an audience for. We don't have much of an agenda, but I thought it obviously would make sense, first of all, to introduce a little bit about each of these guys, what they're doing now and what they've done in the past. So let's start there. Nick, who are you?
To Nick from Nothing.
Yeah.
I love it. No, I mean, I don't have, I suppose, a key personal project that I'm working on. Like the last 10 years of what I've been focused on has been helping other people build businesses, and particularly sort of building startup companies here in the Bay Area. So I was sort of very lucky now almost 10 years ago to join a company called App Annie when it was Series A and 20 people, and it really had the opportunity to ride that through to like a late stage startup doing sort of 100 million in revenue. And my role in that was like turning, I suppose, a very initial product into then leading a good chunk of product management. And then a couple of years ago now, I joined a company called ZenDrive and sort of trying to repeat the story. So like that's like 80-90% of my time right there. And I think sort of, yeah, you and I, we catch up pretty regularly and chat about everything else that exists in that 10-20% for me outside of like 9 to 5. Which is a whole bunch of interesting stuff.
It is funny we rarely talk about your actual job, right, Nick? It's mostly the stuff you do on the side. So, which, just for the sake of clarity, what do you do on the side? What do you want to highlight there? I know property is one thing we talk about.
Yeah, a lot of my last 6 months or so has been really diving into the world of property investing and trying to understand, like, for me, it's like the long-term dream of being sort of financially independent and retired, and sort of what's the path to get there. I've looked at so many different avenues, and property has been the one that I've been really trying to understand like deeply the last 6 months. I'm not sure my timing's been great because the market seems to be like just blowing up. And yeah, like catch up pretty regularly on like crypto and really just, I think years ago it would have been called like lifestyle design. I think it's matured since then, but everything that encompasses. And I remember, yeah, various different fitness programs, and I'm sort of really pushing pretty hard on fitness right now. So that's also chewing up a pretty big chunk of time.
Awesome. And just for the side of the property, you've already dived in, haven't you? You bought at least one property I know of, right?
Yep. So it's like training wheels and sort of dipping toes in and trying to find a way to do it without sort of risking everything. I've got a young family, so that's now another dimension to try and optimize for. But that's been really the last sort of 6 months or so, is trying to wrap my head around that space.
Awesome. Okay. Moving over to Manny. What's the background, Manny?
All right. Well, I used to be a computer engineer, never in Bay Area though, mostly in San Diego and Austin. And I left all of that to start 2000 Books back in 2015. 2000 Books is a book summary portal. It's summaries of the world's best business books and personal development books, mostly for entrepreneurs. And I've been running that business for the last 6 years now. And just recently, and as I was running the business, I got to read a ton of books in the process, over 1,500 books at last count, after which I stopped counting. And what was fun for me was like, I would go into these topics one at a time, deconstruct them, try to figure them out. And one of them was productivity. So I read all of the greatest books on productivity, time management, execution, habits, goal achievement, rituals, routines, anything I could think of. I just basically devoured all of that. And not only that, I summarized those books, created summary packs of those, and then I created multiple courses on productivity. On how to never procrastinate again is one of them, and double your productivity by 5 p.m. tomorrow, that's another one. So I created all these courses, but what I found myself was at crossroads earlier this year when I found my girlfriend fighting with me because she felt like I never had time for her because I was working crazy hours all the time. And I was working from 6-7 in the morning till 7 p.m. in the evening when I would come back from office, and when I would still be on my computer, my phone, and things would just keep on going like that. And she was like, this is not working. This is not the kind of life I like. Nothing. This is not going to change. This is going to be the rest of your life. I can see this already. So what's going on? And I was like, I think I'm the king of productivity. I like when I work my system, the system I have designed, it works. But then a lot of days I just don't work the system, and hence I just fall off the wagon. And I kept on thinking, like, how is it possible? I have probably more knowledge than 99.999% of the world out there when it comes to productivity, but I still can't, I keep doing it, and then I fall off the wagon, and do it, and I fall off the wagon, and I do it, and I fall off the wagon. And some days I do it sometimes I do productivity very well. Sometimes I execute the system for a week, sometimes for a few days, sometimes for a month, but then I inevitably fall off the wagon. So that got me thinking, like, why is that? Why does that happen? And I realized every tool out there when it comes to productivity is dependent on one thing. And that is the most fickle resource that we all have, which is your willpower, your self-discipline, your motivation, right? You can know all about productivity. You shouldn't have your distractions on when you need to do your best work. You should do your most important work first thing in the morning. You should work in large chunks of uninterrupted time. All of these things but for some reason, most of us don't do them because it requires a lot of willpower and motivation and discipline to do productivity every single hour that way. And that's when it came to me. I'm like, how about I outsource?
You guys still hearing Manny?
How about?
Nope. Okay. Well, we wait for Manny's connect.
Such a good story.
Yeah, we're getting to the.
You wanted to hear
we're almost hit
the solution to this willpower thing.
I know. It's like, here's the problem. Where's the answer? We haven't got it yet.
I was.
This is a brutal cliffhanger.
Okay, he's back. Cliffhanger over. Manny, we missed the punchline.
Damn. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I saw you guys talking. I saw you guys commenting on the fact that you can't see me, but I'm like, huh?
That's all right. We're testing Riverside. So for those listening in, this is a test of a 4-way Riverside.fm call as well. So it'll be fun to see the outcome. But Manny, you were like, productivity is not working for you despite reading so many books on this subject. And I feel like there's an answer coming here. What is it?
Right. What I was trying to figure out was that no matter what productivity system or tool or book I read, everything was dependent on my willpower. I had to grit through it. I had to work hard to make it happen. If I didn't, it just didn't happen. And I was like, okay, I need to outsource this need for willpower and motivation and self-discipline, because I just can't keep trying to do it all by myself all the time. It's just impossible. It's a grind that never ends. And that's when Focus Blocks was born, which is basically the idea that instead of me doing the work by myself, how about I get other people with me to join on a live co-working session on Zoom, and we have a structure to the call. We have a structure to that co-working session every hour on the hour. And we bring people together, and we have a structure to the call. The first 5 minutes get you into the productivity zone. 50 minutes, like, you make your commitments, then 50 minutes you do the work, and then 5 minutes is a debrief, and then it starts all over again. So that just started like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. It was an idea, and right now we have over 100 members around the world, and we are running at 22 hours a day. 22 hours a day, Monday through Friday. So 22 focus blocks every single day. Pretty soon we'll get to 24. So that's the fun part of this.
It's actually cool. It is a great timing
about.
To get you talking about this, Manny, and hopefully, if we continue this as well, because it's basically a new startup that, like, for the entire time I've known you, you've been focusing on 200 books and talking about selling 2,000, big number, 2,000 books, and how to turn that and grow that as a kind of a coaching, teaching, information marketing business. And you had this idea. I remember when you first introduced me to this, I was like, so I have to pay a monthly fee just to show up on a Zoom call to force myself to work, because other people are also on the Zoom call, but no one's talking on the Zoom call. And I know we had a laugh when I said to you, this is either a really genius idea or it's just going to absolutely go nowhere. I think the jury's still out, but everything you're saying is sounding very positive. Now, I know, though, probably my skepticism was, this is not something I would do. I would sit down and work, and I don't feel I would join a Zoom call to force me. But you, on the other side, really benefit from having that shared accountability of other people being there to work at the same time. And there's obviously a lot of people like you on the planet who have the same need that stimulation. So I'm gonna pass on to Gideon and just ask him this question as well. Gideon, before we introduce your background, do you need, like, would you benefit from jumping on a Zoom call and having some other people there with you to help you get stuff done?
I'm certainly intrigued by it because I do find that working alone most of the time, from home, there's not much accountability. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur now for 14 years, and it's just me. If I don't want to work, then I don't work. And that can happen more often than maybe preferable. For productivity. But that willpower thing is definitely very interesting as well. I found it interesting, Manny, how you said outsourcing willpower in a way. I'm not sure if those are the words you used, but essentially saying, you don't have enough, so you got to get help from somewhere else. So that's a really cool concept. So yeah, I think I would be. I mean, I'm definitely intrigued, and I think it'd be definitely worth a test to run it and see, hey, does this help me improve productivity? Because I mean, I guess from a psychological perspective, what it does, it kicks in the social proof kind of thing from Cialdini, right? Where if there's other people they're not necessarily watching you, but you kind of they're there. You sort of almost, maybe it sort of mimics being in the same room as them, and you don't want to be seen as the odd one out that's not working and that's slacking off. So I can definitely see how that can play some good tricks on your mind to help you actually do work. I've got a question for you, Manny, though. Like, with that system, is the accountability just for actually sitting there and doing work, or does it give you some accountability for getting specific tasks done that you want to get done?
So the process is that, you join the focus block at whatever hour you decide to join. And when you do join, we walk you through a simple 5-minute process through the whole, like the focus. We have a trained focus guide that will walk you through a simple 5-minute process. And the first 5 minutes are basically devoted to helping you become really focused, and also asking you to make a commitment to what you will work on during this hour, as in what will you accomplish in this hour. So that commitment is noted in that chat or in the communication with the group, so that at the end of the hour, when everything is said and done, you can report back and say, okay, this is how much I got done. And that's like constant feedback, constant commitment and feedback. So it's like, it brings a level of intentionality that normally we don't have as entrepreneurs. We just sit down to work. We're like, okay, I'm going to do this right now, or I'm going to do this right now. But when you are forced to identify clearly what you will accomplish in this hour, suddenly it becomes very real for you, and you are much more focused on that one thing rather than spreading your energy all over the place.
I love the concept. Definitely going to check it out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just for those listening, focusblocks.io,
Yeah,
if you want
thank
to
you.
check it out. I'm sure we'll give a shout out to everyone's projects. Gideon, who are you for those who don't know you?
I am Gideon Shelwick, the one and only. I guess my story of entrepreneurship starts back about 14 years ago. I had a decent job, got qualified as an electronic engineer. Didn't like engineering as much, so I did another degree in engineering management, and I enjoyed that more. I worked for about 5 years in sort of business development and project coordination sort of roles, until I came to the realization, I know it took me a long time, but this, sucked completely, and it wasn't what I thought it would be. Certainly didn't give me the freedom that I was looking for. Didn't give me the freedom of financial freedom. It didn't give me freedom of expression, and definitely not freedom of time. I felt like I was in jail in a way, because I always had to be there at a certain time and leave at a certain time. And it felt like while I was at work, someone else kind of owned my brain, psychologically, because they were paying me to be there. So they're paying for my brain to be there, basically. And so I had to use my brain to focus on the tasks that I got paid for. So it felt kind of like a jail in a way. And it just really exhausted me. So after 5 years, I just said, okay, this is enough. I told my wife, we were back in New Zealand still, and I said, let's just quit our jobs and emigrate to Australia and start fresh and see if I, maybe get a job first, and then just to get a landing pad and then start a business. Long story short, got into Australia eventually. I couldn't find a job. My wife got a job. She was paying the bills. We came over with pretty much nothing. I think we had $10,000 in savings, $10,000. We came over with just our backpacks, basically, with our clothes. And we stayed in a hotel for the first week, but then, and second week we did find a place, and at nothing. So we got a blow-up mattress for our bed, and while we were sort of waiting to figure things out, and I remember our first furniture we bought was two bean bags, and we still have those bean bags. They're awesome. So that was our first furniture. And then about a month later, we had some stuff coming on the ship, which included my computer and I don't know, a few little bits and pieces, but not much. But that's how we started, and that's about 14, maybe almost 15 years ago now, and so it was quite the beginning. But anyway, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was just kind of thrown in the deep end, and I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea about business, and just started trying things. I went to a convention for franchises, and I remember walking through it. It was it's like one of these big halls in Brisbane. I think maybe it was the convention center. I don't even know, but I remember walking past a dog washing franchise, and looking at them going, hang on, these guys have a franchise for washing dogs? So in other words, they must have had a successful business for washing dogs to be able to turn it into a franchise, right? And it got me thinking, hey, if these guys can actually have a dog washing franchise, how hard can it be to start a business, and be successful? So, and I remember telling my wife something like, if I can't make back my salary that I was earning in my previous job, within the first year of being an entrepreneur, then I honestly don't deserve to be paid that much. And my salary was, I think, $52,000, which, I thought was a decent amount back then. But anyway, in the first year, I made maybe, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's around about $10,000, and I spent maybe $11,000. So made a loss of negative 1,000, say, around about there. And I remember looking at my wife and going, okay, I didn't make the money back. So I didn't, I was only worth negative $1,000. I didn't really deserve to be paid that much. And it was a wake-up call for me, because it made me realize, hey, there's something to this game. It's different to being an employee. You've got to have a different mindset, etc. So it took me a while to sort of unlearn the employee mindset and to learn how to think like an entrepreneur. But eventually figured out how to do it. So I did a bunch of projects. I had a bit of success in the first 6 months where I wrote a book and someone promoted it for me. It got distributed to, I don't know, all over the world. It was just an ebook back then. But then, right out of sales, because I didn't know anything about online business or how to build traffic or how to build a proper business. And then I really kind of struggled just trying to figure things out. Did sort of freelancing jobs, video production, website development, graphic design, all sorts of stuff in those first 2 years, just to sort of help figure out the game and help pay the bills. And I remember starting this interview series, because I thought, hey, there's a lot of people here knowing how this game works. Why don't we just interview them? This is back in 2006, 2007, around about there. I started interviewing people on video, and the idea was that I would ask them questions about success and learn from them, record it all, and then turn it into like a membership website. And it all turned out to be way too much work for me. It kind of killed me. It killed my computer, my PC back then, and that's how I eventually switched over to Mac. But it also killed my spirits, because it was just too big. The project was just way too big. So that never saw the light of day. But one of the people I met during that interview series was Yarrow Starrick, the host of the show. So I met Yarrow and invited them over to come and do an interview at our little apartment. I had a green screen set up, and we did the interview. And I remember Yarrow Yara had long hair, and it was incredibly hard to key out the background with Yaro's curly, long hair. It was a nightmare.
Not good for green
Anyway,
screen, no.
yeah, it was. Yeah, well, anyway, we did it, and anyway, that's how our friendship started, and then we did a project together called Become a Blogger back in the day. That went really well. Got some great results from that, and that was kind of like a massive stepping stone for me to then start building other businesses too. And so today I've got a company called Splashio. I've always liked online videos, so I've always been doing that since I've been an entrepreneur basically. So with Splashio now, we basically help people get their videos ready for social media. So people send us their videos, and then we transcribe them, burn the text in as captions, wrap it in a nice frame, add a headline, call to action, a video progress bar, logo animation, whatever, and send them back the video within 24 hours, ready to publish on social media. And by doing that, it helps people get a lot more engagement on their videos, and it just removes that hassle of video production completely from the process. And yeah, so I've been doing that now Splashio has been around since 2012, but I had a bit of a break from it and just got back to it about 2.5 years ago. So this latest version of Splashio is only about 2.5 years ago, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm loving it.
Awesome. Okay, so we kind of have a brief intro. To connect the dots, I know all these guys because of some connection to do with entrepreneurship. Nick and I don't know if we got connected because of entrepreneurship. I mean, we know we did initially because I went to your event that you were co-hosting with some other friends of ours. But I feel like we connected with like rollerblading first more than business. I don't know, Nick. I remember doing that with you more than anything else back in Australia. But I'd love to talk a little bit with each of you, like what you currently focus on, because obviously we could talk forever about our past, but what we're working on right now is often what we would talk to each other about. I feel like it's useful to often share what we're trying to do, where we're getting stuck, what's working, because that then in turn helps each other, because I learn what's working, what you're experimenting with, and whether it's investing or it's your current business, probably both. Sometimes there's some other topics, but let's maybe talk about the active, I would say business, because I know, Nick, you're not currently running your own business. We've tried to get Nick to start a company many times, all of us. Well, not you, Manny, but I know I have, and I know Gideon has as well with Nick. Never quite got him over the line to start something, but he's obviously been involved with a lot of companies and early on as well. So I'm actually going to start this topic by literally talking about what I did today, and I think this would probably connect greatly with you, Nick, because I was spending my entire day doing property management stuff. So in terms of my investment strategy, I am very much in many different buckets, one of them being property here in Montreal, where I currently live. I actually moved deliberately to Montreal to take advantage of the Montreal discount, as I call it, because property here is about half the price of Toronto and Vancouver, and also half the price of Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, where I'm from originally in Australia. So I moved here and bought a triplex. And today I've been basically dealing with a couple of things, checking out repairs that have occurred due to water damage that hit my investment building, and meeting my new tenant for the first time as well. And I think, I guess I don't want to really dive too deep into this, but I do want to surface this as a subject, because I know probably all of us have thought about property. A lot of the listeners are probably in property or considered it. And I'm finding it kind of annoying, to be absolutely honest. Like, it's never been my most favorite way of investing, but there's a part of me that's always sort of a little voice in the back of my head saying, just hold on to the properties no matter how much they challenge you, because in 10, 20 years, you're going to be thanking yourself because of how much capital has accrued and how you've paid down the loans over time with the rent and so on. But I've had burst pipes. I've had two roof water leaks. I had, a tenant leave 2 months early. So there's been a lot of negatives. And not only that, Montreal is not structured well for property management. There's no easy external services to have other people manage property for you. So what I'm focusing on right now is actually turning my new tenant into a potential property manager for the building. This is only because he's turned out to be a handyman as well, and because he lives in the building, he could potentially fix it. it's only like an idea I've literally had just after meeting the guy. So I don't know how well it's going to work, but I'd love to maybe throw the ball over to you guys and what your experiences have been with property as an investment, if you have done any. Nick, probably first, because I know obviously you've done
I
something
can
recently.
I can dive in. So we bought our first investment property in Little Rock in Arkansas last year, and that was something that I guess we've been sitting on the sidelines for a little while and trying to find the right starting point. And I think to back it up, even like why property, it's because a lot of the other places that I saw that we could be investing, I just couldn't find any sort of like strong points of leverage or finding some advantage that I would bring to the situation that I thought was going to be differentiated and long lasting. I looked really sort of deeply into like quite active stock trading, and I tried that for a while, and I did no better, and actually I did worse than just if I'd done nothing. I looked at investing in startups in sort of angel rounds, and that's something obviously that like we've talked about in the past. And at the end of the day, it's just like I'm going to be putting a lot of money into something that I may not see back, and my ability to work out which one's going to be a winner is not much better than anyone else. So why do that? And then what got me excited about property is I had a good friend that I used to work with who bought a couple of houses in Little Rock, which is actually where he grew up, so he knew the market. It was at a price point like a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house of $125,000, which you can get 80% from the bank, and you can rent it such that it generates positive cash flow immediately. And it's like, okay, wow. So all I need to come up with is $30,000 and we can start. And it's an ecosystem, particularly in Little Rock, where for every sort of challenging point and all the things you just mentioned, I haven't experienced yet, but I had a recommendation for a property manager who's been great, and they've made it seamless. So far, so good. And it was a big change when looking at it compared to the Bay Area, which is where we were at the time, because like the property scene in the Bay Area is insane. People show up, they bid 10, 20, 30% over asking, they bring all cash, they waive every contingency, and like that's like maybe I'll have that kind of financial profile one day, but that's certainly not where I am today. And I would see my friends like go all in on stuff that just like obviously they were excited about it, but it looked to me like a really crazy kind of bet. And if something went wrong, if they made a bad decision, if the market turned against them, like as it did a little bit last year, there wasn't a lot of backup plans. So that's what really got me excited about some of these other markets around the US, where you can bring a lot less money, you can diversify a lot more sort of readily, and you can plug in sort of other systems quite affordably. So I remember I was blown away when we bought this investment property. We needed to get some minor repairs done. They got the bill from the property management company, and it was like $200 to get a fence repaired. It's like you can't get anything done in the Bay Area for $200. I don't know what it's like in Montreal.
Oh, that sounds cheap to me.
I sort of looked at this and it's just, wait, is this like part of the fence? Is there another bill coming? Yeah. Have you forgot to put your margin on top of this? Have you like already taken my money from somewhere else and you've deducted it against like the full first month's rent, and $200 is what I owe in addition?
yeah, totally. It's like, sounds like Ukraine prices to me.
Yeah, and it was like, wow, okay, I think we can make this work.
Well, I'm jealous is all I can say so far, Nick, because you've had no problems besides, compared to what I've had. But I think some of that's just luck of the draw of what kind of building you get too. I know like we're not necessarily all interested in property or have done much with property. I'll let Manny and Gideon if you want to share anything with property. But if you don't, I think it is fun to talk about like your kind of core investment strategy. And Nick, you did a great explanation as to why you've decided to begin this experiment with property. It's something that you felt you could control the variables, you liked the numbers involved, and it compared beneficially or compared to the other things you had tried or looked at so far. Manny, what's your story with property or / investing?
So investing, by like when I think of all the money that I put to work, most of it is in passive stock market investments, in the sense I don't actively manage anything, kind of like what Nick was alluding to, trying to do it myself. I never had any good success with it. So it's more of index funds and such that the money is sitting in. And the interesting thing is, I think I always thought, or I've always still believed, that the only investment other than that I want to make is in my business. So I'm like, whatever I can do, all the money I need, I'm just going to keep pumping into the business. And that's going to be like, instead of diversifying, like I got a diversified, safe portfolio that's sitting there, but then now all the risk is on the business side of things, and I'm putting all of my effort, time, energy on business as my biggest investment in terms of me fully vested into it. So I think of my business as the biggest investment in every shape or form. And I feel like I took this kind of rather personally when I was reading Mark Cuban's book. He talked about the idea that, if you're gonna be an entrepreneur, having a house can be one of the biggest liabilities, because it can bog you down, it can slow you down, and all those things. And I'm not sure if that was the perfect answer that he that was there, but I just believed in what Mark Cuban was saying at the time, and I was like, all right, I'm just going and I'm just working on my business, and nothing else matters. And business is all that I'm basically, like, if you want to call it barbell, like I have really safe investments, but then I have very risky investment, which is my business, which can go belly up any given day.
I know you don't necessarily know
that's
it
kind
yet,
of my
but what
strategy.
is the plan if you're all in on your business as your kind of strategy for growing your capital? How do you see that playing out? Like, what do you want out of that, Manny? Yeah, like if you're going to put so much time and energy and resources into the business, is it
out of growing
about
the
one day
business
selling it? Is it hoping it will just return a lot of cash? Like, how do you see it playing out?
Yeah. I mean, both these businesses are kind of cash flow businesses. They aren't really designed for the traditional startup methodology in some ways. And I don't really plan on selling any of them. If anything, I feel like Focus Blocks is the future of what's going to happen with my businesses, in the sense I see Focus Blocks as the current, like, as the way forward for me. And the current Focus Blocks, which is like 1 hour, like 24 hours of accountability and productivity, that's just one piece of the overall productivity puzzle. I see us being able to create a lot of back-end products and services and things like that, selling to corporations and really taking it. I want people to never work alone. That's kind of my motto. Like, that's what I feel with Focus Blocks, never work alone. And that's the vision I have with Focus Blocks. So no, I have no intention of selling it or even like thinking about, getting out of it in any way, shape or form. I just want to grow this damn business as much as I can.
Yeah, it's funny, like,
take it to millions of people if you can do that.
But I hear you say this. First of all, I love the "no one work alone" as a phrase. That's so, I guess, applicable now with sort of the work at home lifestyle that we've all been living. It's being at home but not being alone. If that's something you can help with, that's amazing. But I like this idea of, you have a vision for a company, but let's be honest, Manny, you didn't have this company 2 months ago. So it's like talking to you now, it's like, whoa, you've got so much energy behind this, but this company didn't exist. And your energy was sort of more around 2000books.com and what was going on there. But I feel there was a connection between this whole concept of you want to make people more productive. So maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of like a combination of a passion for a subject, but also obviously wanting to see a very profitable business be born from whatever you do in that subject.
Yeah, the biggest reason why I feel like 2000 books has been like, the reason why I focus so much more on Focus Blocks now compared to 2000 books is because I always felt like 2000 books was so dependent on me. I had become the personality, I'd become the face. Never really wanted that, but that's what it has been, and that's what it'll always be. And I always felt like that was going to be limited in terms of scope, in terms of what we can do with it. There's a ceiling when I am the one who's delivering value in that business. But with Focus Blocks, I'm not delivering any value in the business. I rarely, if ever, do any. I'm not a focus guide on maybe I do 2 hours a week of being a focus guide. The remaining time is actually other people on our team who do that work, right? The 22 hours a day, someone else doing it. So it's like, this is where it's totally scalable because I don't have to be involved in the day-to-day operations in any way, shape, or form. And I have a great operations manager. She takes care of so many of these things that I only focus on marketing and selling the damn thing. And I feel like this is where it's truly scalable, while 2000 books was always going to be limited because I had to be the content guy, I had to be the book reader guy, I had to be everything and also be the marketing mind and all those things. So that's why I truly believe in focus blocks. And as you know, I've probably created more productivity courses than any other areas in business or in personal development, because I've always been a geek about productivity. So this is something like where my passion meets the opportunity and the market is willing to pay for it, kind of like what Good to Great talks about, Jim Collins talks about in the book.
Where's
right?
the money?
What's your passion, what the market needs, and what, what's the passion, what's the market needs, and what they're willing to pay for it, and what we can be the best at. And I truly feel we could be the best at this whole game of productivity. It's not really all that difficult, given every day I record testimonials with people, literally, because they come in so fast and furious. Like, I just have to say, hey, are you having a good experience? And they're like, yes. I'm like, all right, let's record a testimonial. It's like every day I get new people,
Lots of
and
positive
within 2 days
feedback.
they're like
Yeah.
fans, and I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
this
It'd be
is
fun
way
maybe if
more
we keep doing these sort of regular
fire
calls. We
than
can,
2000 books ever
keep
was.
track of the numbers
Yeah.
as times go on. But I feel like as you're saying some of the things about not being the face of the company, the brand, it's reminding me of some conversations with you, Gideon, about you not wanting to necessarily always be the face and the brand, and even struggling with that because you know how powerful having a lead figure as the brand is for your company. And we also have to know what you're focused on right now, because we got to get your side of that question as well.
Yeah, totally. That's a pretty big question, like this, whether how you build your business, whether you go down the personal brand sort of path, or building a brand like a company brand, or if maybe do both, and how you combine them in the best possible way. And I had the exact same sentiments as you, Manny. About 10 years ago, our first 11 years now, our first child was born, a little daughter. Well, she's bigger now. And I asked myself the question if something. Well, back then I had a business that was fully dependent on my brain again. It was scalable. It was, made some good money, very highly profitable. However, there's two things I couldn't do with it. One is I couldn't sell it, and two, it couldn't run without me. So that was a problem. So when my daughter was born, it became a lot more sort of real. It's like, if something happens to me, and then what happens to the family? If my wife can't work, she's busy looking after a little baby, what then? And that's when I started Splashio. That's very soon. Actually, well, Nick and I we started Flickdesk a little bit before Splashio. It was another. It never actually saw the day of light, that particular one.
We had some really good fun with that, and I remember that big presentation we did.
Yes.
And yeah, it's like one of the startups that makes that 90% that fail.
Yeah, and it was
the only time we ever got Nick to be doing a business too. Gideon, I should give you credit. You actually got him that far to starting something.
It was a lot of fun.
I can't remember how long we spent on it. Maybe somehow I've got 6 months in my head for, us working on it. I remember we did one really big project, and it probably burnt us out of it. But that's maybe another story to talk about.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was the first sort of branded kind of business that I started, and then Splashio, relatively soon after that. And the idea there was that I could build a business that could run independently of me, but that I could also sell if I wanted to later on, to give me that choice. Not that I necessarily wanted to, but I wanted to have the choice in case I did get sick of it, or in case my life situation changed. I wanted to have that choice. So Splashio has been that. Also built another company called V-Roll. Sold my shares in that about 2.5 years ago, and that's when I jumped back onto Splashio again. And yeah, there's still the big question: is it still important to have a personal brand? And I don't think it's necessary if you've got a company brand, but it can be helpful. I think it can definitely be helpful for promotional purposes, for trust building and that sort of thing. But I really like the idea of having a separate brand, separate from you, that can run independently of you, that can grow independently of you, that you can market and promote and independently of you, and that you definitely sell as well without your face being in it. I think that's hugely beneficial, because it kind of becomes a thing in and of itself, independent of you, and that's great. I think there's a lot of value in that. So I don't know, where's the question going? I mean,
well, I know we were talking about our investment
what we're doing
strategies
now
as well.
and investments.
You have a property story somewhere in there, if I remember, Gideon, but it wasn't a long one.
Yeah, I want to sort of come back to this, this big question of investment. Like for me as an entrepreneur, especially, like especially once you start making money, where do you start investing it? Where's the best place to have your money? And like Manny was saying, like for us in a similar way, we've mainly been investing it right back into the business. It's not like I'm inexperienced necessarily in or like I've never thought about investment. Like before I became an entrepreneur, I haven't really shared this story with many people, but I was actually like a semi full-time currency trader. So we traded US dollar, Swiss franc. There were 4 that we traded. I can't remember all the exact details, but it was incredibly intense, and it was day trading as well, right? So I guess you wouldn't call it investment as such, but some of the principles were very similar. So we did more paper, chart, what do you call it? Technical trading as opposed to fundamental trading, but we did pay attention to the fundamentals as well. So I did that for about 2 or 3 years, and did options trading. I started with options trading, and then went into currency trading, and basically got really burnt out. I got completely burnt out from currency trading, because what I was doing is, like, I had my full-time job, started at 7 o'clock in the morning, would finish at 3. Get home, run about 4 o'clock, and have a quick bite or whatever, and then start trading or back trading. It's like most of your time goes into back trading with technical trading or analysis. Back trading and maybe putting some positions in at about 8 o'clock. And between, you have dinner as well in front of the computer. Well, I would have dinner, and my wife would bring me dinner. She's amazing. And then basically back trade, chat my trading partner until about 11 o'clock at night. And I did that for about a year, and then our strategy changed, and it meant that I had to get up at that same routine. So 7 o'clock start in the morning, get home at 4, start trading at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, whatever, and then until 11 o'clock at night, go to bed. And then for this new thing, I had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to close our positions. We couldn't automate it back then. And so I was up for about half an hour to an hour. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I need my sleep. And when it gets interrupted, I'm not a happy person the next day. Ask my wife for the last 11 years we've had kids, being interrupted from sleep. It's not a good thing for me. I don't handle that well. Anyway, I did that for a month, and I was just dead. At the end of that, I was just going, okay, this is like, it reached the epitome, and I was just going, what do I want to do? Do I want to be like a trader? Is that what I want to spend my life on? Do I just want to look at charts all day long and look at numbers going up and down all day long, and kind of get addicted to that thrill of winning and losing money? At the end of it, it kind of seemed like gambling to me in a way, because at the end of the day, you could never predict what the market was going to do accurately. Like you could always predict. On your back trading, you can go, okay, according to my back trading, this is, you work out a system, right? And you go, okay, according to this, it should do this to this sort of percentage. And what was so interesting about that was that even though on our back trading, our results would be like, we'd find these systems that would just be, we would get like 2,000 return on investment sort of strategies. Like, it was crazy. It was just like, from on our back trading. But then we'd implement it, and we'd lose money. and we go, hang on, what's what's wrong here? And then we would trace back, we'd go look at all our transactions and go, what the heck happened? Why, for the last month, we were supposed to make like a 2,000% return on investment. Why did we lose everything? Or not just lose everything, made a loss as well, because it was really, really leveraged trades. And we came to realize that the only simple answer was that it was due to human error every single time. So every single time that we'd lose money, or that the trade wouldn't work, or the system wouldn't work, it wasn't because of the system, it was because of the human error. You'd think, oh, you just missed this one, it'll be all right, or you just make that little error there and it'll be all right in the long scope of things. After a month or 6 months, you go, hang on, all those little, like, you miss one big trade, it can wipe out your profits for the whole month. So then I said, this is just not my game. I realized that it was just not my game. It wasn't my game for wealth building and for being happy, and that was part of the reason why I became an entrepreneur. I wanted to create something. So for my personality, it really makes sense to create, and creating business is fun for me. Like, I love the idea of creating a business, like coming up with new designs, new products. Reaching new markets. It's all very creative in and of itself, and that excites me. That gives me energy. And doing trading and investment sort of stuff doesn't give me energy. It takes my energy away. So my strategy now really is, at least shorter term, at the beginning days of being an entrepreneur, is to put all my energy, all my assets, all my money, whatever I could, into the business. And to have only one egg in the basket, not to diversify at all. And the reasoning behind that is to give me the best possible chance of success, because it's rigged in a way, but it's rigged towards my interests and passions and natural talents, and also in an area that I'm really knowledgeable in. So, for example, it's in the video marketing space. I'm really passionate about that. I love video. It's very creative. It's very visual, and there's a lot of people who are interested in it. So it's rigged for success. So with me putting all my eggs into one basket, or just one egg in one basket, I've got a much better chance of success. That's my view anyway. And then the longer term vision is that as the business makes money, and this is where we are sort of moving into now with our current stage in life, is as the business becomes really profitable, we can't invest that money fast enough back into the business. So now we got to ask the question, okay, do we just keep that money in the bank where it's earning almost, I think it's 1% interest at the moment here in Australia, or do we do something a bit smarter with it? And then the next question is, if we want to do something smarter with it, like either real estate or paper assets or other businesses, do we do it ourselves? Do we take some time out of our schedule, away from our business, and become experts, so to speak, at these other investment vehicles? Or do we find someone else who's already an expert and just get them to do it for us and give them a cut, give them pay them whatever their commissions are, or whatever that structure is, whatever that deal is. And so that's sort of the place we're at the moment. We had some experience in buying a house before, and it was the dumbest decision for us as entrepreneurs ever. It took all our capital away. It was just after the financial crisis, 2008, run about there. And then it was a terrible house. We lived in the house. So I wouldn't even call it an investment. It wasn't an investment. I wouldn't put it under the investment category. We bought the house because we were cash rich, and we thought, hey, it doesn't matter where you live, etc., because we work from home. But it was a bad decision. It was a really bad decision. We lost $60,000 when we sold that house. It was terrible, and like a year of our lives. It was just terrible disaster. So I think going forward, it would be, we wouldn't, if we buy a house for us, it wouldn't be for investment necessarily, but we would certainly be interested in working with someone else to help us with investment properties, or investing in some sort of diversified portfolio where someone else who we trust and who's got a good proven track record of success, they do the investments for us. And then in the meantime, we keep focusing on our business. We're in a place that we're really good at, and build up that asset and that cash flow as much as we can, and then keep on reinvesting that cash that we're not using in the business into all these other assets. So that's kind of the overall big picture strategy for us.
Mm. No, I appreciate you guys all diving into like your kind of investment philosophies. You can see the kind of similarities, especially like Manny and Gideon. You guys are both talking about putting a lot of your energy and almost all of it into your companies at the moment. And Gideon, you actually reminded me when you said like with the investing, you know, if you miss one day when the market had its big gain, or you know,
Yeah.
like I remember, Manny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Tony Robbins, I assume you know everything about every book, Manny, but Tony Robbins' book, Money Master the Game, I think it was, and he was saying like if you just leave your money in there. It was like the advice from all the biggest wealth creators. But the risk is there's 2 or 3 days in a 10-year period where the biggest gains happen. And if you miss those days, you are actually going to be, you know, negative for your results over those 10 years. So the trick is just don't touch it. I'd like to kind of throw to Nick here because, Nick, I can't say that you have the same thing with wanting to throw all your energy into your own business. And I've always been kind of curious how your motivation works with a job, because you've had some fun jobs in the past, but at the same time, you don't get to control your time quite the same way. And I think it's great you're here because you do give us an input, and there'll probably be a lot of people listening to this who are in jobs and probably, you know, think they might be thinking side hustles, they might be thinking leave one day, or they might be just thinking, let's take what I make from my job and you know, grow it as much as I can using investment vehicles. So I'd love to know your overall kind of philosophy around where you put your energy, you know, into, let's call it a career, because that's what you've got, right?
All right. So I feel like I have to even walk this back again and offer a correction, because
Please do.
like when we first got together, sort of I'd done a couple of my own startups, and it's probably generous to call them startups. I think sort of Flickdesk with Gideon was the one that was sort of the most formal. But before that, I was
What was that? Just so we all know, what was Flipdesk or Flickdesk?
It was Flickdesk. It was an online video editing marketplace, and I still think it's a really good idea. And it's actually the way you described Splashio earlier reminds me of some of the early dreams that we had for it. But we were way too early, and the internet infrastructure was just never going to be where it needed to be for that model at that time to work. And I think it's a classic example of good idea, bad timing.
Good description.
But before that, sort of, I was running my own business in Australia, and I was frustrated with it because I was the one, sort of in the same way that Manny described, just like I was in the middle of everything, and at the time I didn't have the knowledge or the skills to extract myself from that. So I was sort of doing a bad job of creating a pipeline of new clients, and I would go from that feast to famine cycle and just bounce through that every 3 months, where I'd suddenly win some business and be then super busy to execute against that, not have any time for sort of lead generation and nurturing prospective clients. I'd clear those projects, and then I'd be like, great, I'm not getting paid this week. Oh dear, I've got to go and now find more clients. And that was just bouncing around. And I did that for a few years. And
that was an agency?
I got to work on a lot of interesting...
Nick?
That was a company that I ran called Digital Done Different. I think actually it's probably a terrible name looking back on it now. But it was essentially an agency model. And I got burned out on it. I was bored. And that was then sort of the trigger for trying and exploring different things. And that's ultimately what led me to joining a startup and joining an early stage startup, where I had the opportunity to be mentored by people who were much sort of more experienced in building a company and structuring a sales and marketing team, structuring a product and a development team, looking at all the various KPIs and metrics and operations that you need to then scale that business out. And it was fantastic, and I learned a lot, and it became a very valuable and marketable skill that I was like good at, and it really played to my strengths. Sort of, I'm the I suppose classic generalist role. I like to know a little bit about everything, but it's difficult for me to go super deep on one particular topic, and that's essentially what product management as a career is. I think really like the best way to think about product management is it's touching on every area of the business, and the only other person that really gets to do that is the CEO. But you don't carry that stress and that risk and those sort of night terrors of, okay, is this going to work tomorrow? and that's been really good for me for the last 10 years. So I think when I was thinking about sort of investment and sort of like what are my motivations and sort of strategies there, I think first of all it's to do work that's interesting and valuable to the world, and to do it with like people I admire and respect, and to have that collaboration on a day-to-day basis that I think is really hard to get as an entrepreneur. Like the challenge that I see with focus blocks is exactly what I sort of experience in my own role now that COVID's happened and we're all remote. And it's like we don't get that interaction on a day-to-day basis in the office, and that's sort of a really hard thing to replace quickly by then doing your own startup. And now that I have a family and I have a 2-year-old, I'm much more, I suppose, considerate of optimizing for the long-term like happiness and success of the family unit, not just myself. It's like if my wife was not here, if my 2-year-old was not here, then it'd be much easier for me to do like, all right, I'm going to go and quit my job and I'm going to go down and do a side hustle because that's what I'm excited about this week. And the price of failure is not too high in that situation. But when sort of you've got a family around you, that's my thinking on that has changed dramatically in the last sort of 2-3 years.
So true. So true. Kids change everything, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, they
Especially
change things in, like,
two-year-olds.
in a completely different dimension than you never expected. It's like one of the things I think that I've been most conscious of over the last 12 months is it like my son is wonderful and adorable, but he's energy draining, and like the kinds of things that he can do that are also enjoyable for me are like this big. And they don't last for more than about 20 or 30 minutes. Like reading him some books is pretty fun for both of us. But everything else he wants to do is not so much fun for me. So boredom creeps in really quickly. And then we need to find ways to manage that. And like that's been a big part of my learning curve there, was working out, well, how do I leverage my time more effectively? How can I sort of bring in various services to the home, whether it be like a cleaner or sort of outsourcing various different tasks so that I can devote the lion's share of my time to my job, and I can then still have energy and brain power in the end of the day to like, where do we need to be going as a family, and setting those goals over the next sort of 6, 12 months, 5 years, so that like we're able to live the kind of life that we want in the long term, not just sort of have it as a someday, one day kind of thing. Well, when we retire in 20 years time, hopefully that'll all be in place. I'm much more interested to really actively manage that quality of life and think about the different tools that we have to our advantage. I think having like a good job gives you a lot of advantages that entrepreneurs often don't have, where you can go to a bank and you can ask for a loan and you can buy a house. And that can be more challenging when you're sort of don't have a job and you're sort of in the early days of building a company, where it's like, well, where's your income and where's your business? And it's like, well, I don't have that yet, but it's coming. So those are the kind of challenges and sort of things that I try and like apply different strategies to. It's not to say I'll never do a startup, but I think like the path for the next few years is probably not that.
You have a startup already with your new child, Nick. So I think there's a lot of comparisons to.
I want to also just mention something here that Nick sparked the idea for, and and it relates to capital and investment and these sort of bigger sort of topics we're talking about. And as you grow your family, as you start getting more kids, your expenses increase, and they increase significantly. It's not like it's just a few dollars or whatever. Like our expenses have increased significantly since we've started getting children. And I remember a friend of mine saying once, he's quite an influential guy, he had 4 boys, I think, 3 or 4 boys, and he made this comment in passing once. Someone said, hey, kids are expensive, right? And he said, yeah, they cost millions. And I thought he was joking, because that was before we had kids, or just at the beginning. And now looking back at that comment, it was quite a few years ago, I'm going, oh yeah, I can see how that is very true. It's maybe not millions within the first year, but you count it all up over a 10-year, 20-year period, it really is millions. Like it can be millions, depending on where you live and what school you send your kids to, and
Especially when
where
you
you
factor in
live.
opportunity cost as well of all that energy and that brain space that was consumed because you didn't get a good night's sleep, and therefore you weren't able to do as good a job as you wanted to the next day, and then that adds up over time. And
That's the good. I've often thought about that, Nick, and thinking, has it helped my career, or has it detracted from my career, and um, changed your
Big
risk
time.
profile tremendously.
Yeah.
And it changes your risk profile, which is
Right.
a lot of money as well, right? Because when your risk profile changes, you
No,
are not
that's
gonna go
very-
after the big swings
totally, yeah.
anymore.
I've never thought
You
of
know,
opportunity
play
cost and children
in a little more
before.
controlled
That is-
fashion.
that is an interesting angle to think about there. Mostly because most people talk about children in such a life-changing way. And I should clarify, myself and Manny do not have children. Nick and Gideon do. Gideon a little further along with his larger family of slightly older children than Nick, but still, it's it'll certainly play a part in all of our decision making. But yeah, opportunity cost of children. I'm sure there's some people out there who sit down with like a pen and paper and go, I could shoot for the stars with the company or make a baby, and that's two very different things, but they impact each other significantly.
Well, I want to say this because I think it's really important. Some from this conversation, people might think, oh yeah, when you have children, maybe you have less chance of succeeding, and I'm not sure if that's true. I think as you get children, you become more motivated to do something amazing with not just with your life, but also to provide for your family. That certainly becomes one of your primary drivers. But then also there's something else that happens inside of you that goes, I want to do something that makes a difference. There's certainly an aspect of that kicks in. And maybe it's driven by the survival instinct, to go, hey, I've got kids now, I've got to work extra hard now, or I've got to work extra smart now because I don't have as much time as before. I've got to think more about leverage. I've got to think more about how do I build a team so I don't have to do everything myself anymore, so I don't burn out, so that I can spend more time with the family. So I think all those building a family is actually really good for business and for
I was going to say
you're
making children sound like a focus block. Like you make the baby, and that means you got to work very focused on the time you're not with the baby, right?
Well, I think there's nothing more motivating than when you're starting from scratch, and there's a new baby on the way, and you don't have a job and you don't have much money to make a success. Like when that baby is coming, you go, I have to do something, because they're so dependent. They're 100% dependent on you. Their little baby. They're completely helpless when they're born, and when in the first few weeks the mum can't do much, and if there's I think it's one of the most motivating things in the world to make something work when you have that. So it's certainly been the case, for me. Like I think specifically for our third child, that we definitely had that sort of scenario play off very well. We were in a situation where things didn't go according to plan, like we thought, and we kind of had to start from scratch again. And then there was a new baby on the way. It's like, oh, okay, nice one. So, but that really,
You sound like you're not responsible for that.
No, well, that's another story.
Oh, okay.
sharpens your focus. Sharpens your focus and helps you prioritize.
Yeah, totally. You sort of just go, okay, should I go out to this thing or should I go to this event? Is it going to help the business, and help us become financially independent? And the answer is no. You just go, there's no chance I'm going. If it's not going to be beneficial for the goal that you have for your business and for your family, it becomes really easy to say no to things. It's really important.
So I know we've hit about an hour here, and I know we've all got things to do, children to attend to / businesses to grow, or focus blocks to attend to as well. So I want to be cognizant of our time frames. Let's wrap it up. Obviously, this is an experiment for all of us. Experiment for me to put this out in the podcast feed, and for the listeners, see if you guys get any value from it. From my point of view, we obviously have 3 guys who've succeeded in different things and some overlap as well. And obviously, we're not just talking business, as we're talking about fatherhood here as well. And I am totally interested in taking this wherever it goes. I think one thing we need is a name. I'm going to throw that out to all three of you guys. I'd love to give this a name for our kind of, I'm calling it a sub show on my podcast. Plus topics. So I'm throwing this out to the audience and to my co-hosts here. Is we don't want to be too rambling every episode. It would be great to kind of have some kind of direction. I listen to a lot of other sort of podcasts that it's actually becoming like a thing. There's 4 guys on a podcast. I'm sure there's 4 women on a podcast out there too on some shows, but often it's like very news focused, people talking about what is happening right now, and whether it's technology or business or life or whatever. I'm totally open to taking this wherever it goes, but I'd love to get feedback from the audience too. So if there's any subjects you guys want us to cover, obviously for a lot of you, Nick, Manny, and Gideon might be complete blank slates. You only know them to the extent you've heard today. So we'll build out your background story and personalities a bit more too going forward, because I think it's helpful when it comes to coming up with new topics to also feel like you guys can contribute in those areas too. I know your strengths, some of them anyway, but the audience will get to know them more over time as well. Anyway, I'm just saying all this to convince these guys to keep doing the show with me, because obviously this is an experiment for them as well. And we can have guests on too. We can always throw in, bring on some of our friends and, head down new directions. But I'm going to call it a day. If you guys are all good, if you want to, any last minute things to say before we hit the end on the recording. I'm getting dead silence from these guys, so we're going to call it done. We're going to think about a name.
It was fun.
And good to see you. And thanks all 3 of you for joining me.
Cheers.
Thank you, Yaro.